The Interstellar Council's grand chamber buzzed with a murmur of voices as representatives from dozens of advanced species deliberated. At the center of the sprawling, dome-shaped room, holographic displays projected humanity's recent activities on the galactic stage, trading, negotiating, and exploring. For the most part, these actions were harmless, even quaint. The consensus among the council members was clear: humanity posed no real threat. "Gentle beings, the evidence is overwhelming," said Chancellor Zoreth of the Zarn, his crystalline body catching the light as he gestured dramatically. "The humans are industrious, yes. Curious, undoubtedly. But dangerous? Absolutely not. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their physicality is laughable compared to species like the Yuarjan or the Draken. Even their conflicts are primitive." Ripples of agreement spread through the room. Murmured phrases like harmless and unremarkable echoed among the delegates. At the far end of the chamber, Captain Elena Ward sat silently, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She was humanity's representative here, dressed in a plain but dignified uniform. Her expression remained neutral, betraying none of the irritation simmering beneath the surface. A Jorith delegate, whose gelatinous form quivered as they spoke, added, "They adhere to peculiar concepts like honor and ethics in their conflicts." How quaint! They even developed rules for war to limit harm. Truly, they are not like us. Elena tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She tapped a small device on the table before her, signaling her intent to speak. The council's central AI acknowledged her request, amplifying her voice across the chamber. "If I may," she began, her tone calm but firm, "I'd like to provide some context on humanity's so-called harmless nature." The room fell silent. The alien representatives turned their attention to the lone human, their curiosity piqued. It was rare for a species representative to challenge the council's consensus so directly. "Your analysis of humanity is understandable," Elena continued, choosing her words carefully. "By your metrics, technological advancement, physical prowess, we may seem insignificant. But metrics can be deceiving. You've observed our present without understanding our past. Allow me to enlighten you." She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to build anticipation. Then, leaning forward slightly, she added, "I'd like to start by asking, do you know what the term war crimes means?" The room filled with murmurs once more. Some representatives exchanged confused glances, while others appeared outright dismissive. Chancellor Zoreth frowned, his crystalline body dimming slightly. "War crimes? A contradiction in terms. War is chaos. Crime implies order. How can the two coexist?" Elena's smile widened, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Precisely. And yet, humanity has created rules for war. Rules to contain its horrors, to protect those who cannot defend themselves. And when those rules are broken, we call them war crimes. Acts so heinous, they defy even the brutal logic of conflict." The room grew quieter. A few representatives shifted uncomfortably, sensing the gravity of her words. "Of course," she added, her voice steady, "the existence of such rules also implies something else. It implies that we've seen horrors unimaginable, horrors that necessitated such measures. And I promise you, our capacity for those horrors is far greater than you realize." She leaned back in her chair, her eyes scanning the room. "So before you decide to call us harmless, you might want to consider what it means to create rules for war and what it means when those rules are broken." Elena let the weight of her words settle before continuing, her tone calm but deliberate. "War crimes," she repeated, as though testing the phrase for their ears. "They're violations of the rules we humans impose to prevent our conflicts from becoming too monstrous. Rules like not targeting civilians, not torturing prisoners, and not using certain types of weapons. Noble ideas. Wouldn't you agree?" She allowed herself a small pause, observing the room's unease. "And yet, our history is riddled with examples of those rules being shattered. Let me give you some context. On Earth, we've fought wars so devastating that entire nations ceased to exist. Take chemical warfare, for example. Humans once unleashed toxic gases across battlefields, gases that burned lungs and blinded eyes. The devastation was so horrific that we collectively outlawed it. But even then, those rules weren't always followed. A murmur spread across the chamber. A representative of the Threxian delegation, a sleek, insectoid species, raised one of its many appendages. You mean to say your species used weapons that indiscriminately harmed even those who posed no threat? And then you forbade them? Why create such weapons in the first place? Elena's eyes locked onto the Threxian. Because humans have always been driven to innovate, even in the most destructive ways. And because, in war, desperation often overrides morality. When survival is on the line, boundaries blur. Take Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities destroyed in mere moments by the most powerful weapons we'd ever created at the time. Nuclear bombs. The word hung in the air, unfamiliar and yet inherently ominous. We built them to end a war that claimed millions of lives. And it worked. But the cost? The deaths of hundreds of thousands in an instant. Shadows burned into the ground. Entire families wiped out. That's the kind of decision we're capable of making when we believe the stakes are high enough. The alien representatives exchanged uneasy glances. For species accustomed to ritualized, honor-bound conflicts or cold, calculated skirmishes, such blunt pragmatism was alien. Terrifyingly so. And it doesn't end there, Elena continued. We've fought wars that weren't about survival, but about power, ideology, and resources. In those wars, atrocities piled up like mountains. Entire ethnic groups were targeted for eradication, genocide we call it. Death camps, mass graves, forced labor. All in the name of hatred or ambition. These are the scars of our past. A hulking Draken delegate, his scales glinting under the chamber's light, growled low. And yet you claim to have rules for war. What good are these rules, if they are so often broken? Elena met his gaze, unflinching. The rules don't always hold. But their existence speaks to our understanding of war's cost, both on those who fight and those who don't. We create these rules because we know what happens when they're ignored. And even when we fail, we remember. We prosecute those responsible. We teach the next generation to do better. Our history is a cycle of destruction and reflection. That's what makes us dangerous, Ambassador. Not just our capacity to destroy, but our ability to learn from it. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. Elena's voice softened, but her words carried an edge. You call us harmless because we've managed to build a peaceful presence among the stars. But peace isn't the absence of violence, it's the mastery of it. We learn to master it the hard way. Elena let her words linger, observing the silent room. Then, with measured calm, she continued. You've seen what we're capable of when we make mistakes. But now let me show you what we can achieve when we focus, adapt, and innovate. Humanity's history is not just a chronicle of destruction. It's a testament to our relentless will to survive, no matter the odds. Her tone shifted slightly, carrying a pride that was both restrained and undeniable. Consider this. We are a species that evolved on a planet of predators. We had no claws, no natural armor, no venom. By all rights, we should have been prey. And yet we thrived. We adapted to every environment, from frozen tundras to arid deserts, through ingenuity and determination alone. We turned sticks into spears, stones into tools, and fire into our shield against the dark. She leaned forward, her gaze sweeping the chamber. Do you know what desperation teaches? It teaches innovation. During the First World War, when our soldiers faced impassable trenches and constant artillery fire, we invented tanks, machines that could cross the mud, and barbed wire. In the Second World War, when the skies filled with enemies, we developed radar, breaking the limits of sight. And when we realized the next great war might destroy us entirely, we forged alliances, created frameworks for peace, and built deterrents so devastating that no one dared use them again. This is who we are. We innovate because we must. And when our survival is at stake, there are no limits to what we'll do. The Uarjan representative, a massive, reptilian figure with scars tracing his scaled hide, rumbled a question. Your examples speak of desperation, of survival. But survival is instinctual. What makes you think your species is unique in this? Elena's eyes flicked to him, her expression unwavering. Instinct is universal. But humanity's edge isn't just instinct. It's our refusal to accept defeat, even when all hope seems lost. We've faced extinction-level events. Ice ages, plagues that wiped out a third of our population, meteor impacts. Each time, we endured. Each time, we adapted. We don't just survive. We thrive in adversity. She straightened in her seat. You see our wars and call them chaos. But war, for humanity, has always been a crucible. It forges resilience. It forces us to innovate faster than any peaceful period ever could. You look at our past and see atrocities. We see lessons carved into the bones of history. Every war we've fought, every hardship we've endured, has prepared us for the next challenge. And now, standing among you, we bring all of that with us. Every failure, every victory, every lesson. Her voice grew colder, sharper, as she continued. But don't mistake this for recklessness. Humans don't seek war. We value peace because we understand its fragility. We build alliances because we've seen what happens when trust is broken. But when the time comes, when we're pushed to the edge, we fight like no one else can. Not because we want to, but because we know how. The chamber grew even quieter, if such a thing were possible. The aliens shifted uneasily, and for the first time, Elena saw something new in their expressions. Doubt. Not doubt in her words, but doubt in their assumptions. Doubt in their safety. Humanity's strength isn't in our weapons or our technology, Elena said, her voice steady. It's in our adaptability, our endurance, and most of all, our ability to learn, sometimes too late, but always in time to come back stronger. That's what you should fear. Elena let the silence stretch, the weight of her words settling over the chamber like a dense fog. She studied the faces of the alien representatives, their varied expressions ranging from unease to outright alarm. Slowly, she leaned back, her hands resting lightly on the table before her. Her voice, when it came again, was softer but no less firm. You see, we don't view war the way you do. For many of you, conflict is ritualistic or calculated, a means to an end, carefully measured. For humans, war is chaos incarnate, a maelstrom of destruction, innovation, and desperation. But what makes us truly dangerous isn't our capacity for violence. It's that we understand its cost better than anyone else. We've walked through the ashes of civilizations, ours and others, and we've carried that burden forward. That's why we fear war even as we prepare for it. She paused, her gaze sharp as it moved across the room. But make no mistake, our reluctance to fight is not a weakness. It's a choice. A choice rooted in the knowledge of what we can do when the gloves come off. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to remind you that humanity doesn't act lightly, but when we do act, we do so with everything we have. A representative from the Telari, their translucent skin glowing faintly with agitation, finally broke the silence. If your people carry such a burden, why continue to expand? Why reach for the stars? Surely a species so scarred by war would seek to avoid it entirely. Elena allowed herself a small smile, though it carried no warmth. Because we're more than the sum of our conflicts. For every act of destruction, there's been an act of creation. We reached for the stars not out of greed or conquest, but because it's in our nature to explore, to learn, to connect. We've built wonders as grand as the horrors we've unleashed. We've cured diseases that once ravaged us, mapped the very fabric of reality, and crafted art and stories that touch the soul. Humanity is not defined by its wars, but by its ability to rise above them. Her voice grew steadier, more resolute. But let me be clear. While we prefer diplomacy, there are lines we will not allow to be crossed. If humanity is cornered, if everything we've built is threatened, we won't hesitate to do what's necessary. We've clawed our way through extinction before. We've stared into the abyss and come out stronger. If you think you've seen the worst of us, I assure you you haven't. The Czarn Chancellor, who had been so dismissive at the beginning, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Are you saying your people would destroy everything, even themselves if provoked? Elena met his gaze without flinching. If it meant protecting what we hold dear?
Yes.
But we'd rather not be forced to make that choice. That's why we're here, to contribute, to learn, to grow alongside the rest of you. But you need to understand, peace with humanity is a partnership. War with humanity is something you cannot afford. She stood, her voice carrying finality as she concluded. You call us harmless because we choose peace. Remember that choice. It's what makes us human. But if you strip it away, if you force our hand, you'll discover why we're still here after millennia of war and chaos. We didn't survive because we're harmless. We survived because we refused to surrender. As the echoes of her words faded, Elena turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The finality of her message lingered long after she was gone.